Hey everyone, on this episode, we're going to talk to my beloved friend and teacher, Scott K. Smith, about what happens when the psychic prediction is not correct, about his life pivot, and about the role of magic in focusing your energy towards a life pivot. This is Bevin, a femme over 40 and her friends podcast. I'm your host, Bevin. I've said my name 3 times. It's time to start the show. Welcome back to the podcast, Scott.
Thank you, Bevin. I'm a friend on the show. I'm happy to be here. I gotta say, I'm a little nervous. It's like I'm on the podcast for the first time again. It's a very neat and new energy, but I'm super happy to be here. Yeah.
I'm so excited that you're back. And I think you are my most frequent guest because I have you on annually on or about the solstice, but we all know that divine timing. We've rescheduled this podcast episode a few times, but here we are, synchronous time and space to be able to share. Scott, I'd love to start business in the front. Will you tell the people how they can work with you and what you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say that I think that the moon is in Aries, when we record this, and I think it might have been in Pisces when we were going to do it, and that could have been all over the place because the moon in Pisces just throws me like, who knows
Me
what you guys would have
too.
got.
Me too. Oof. I think we were also
um,
going to do it at this in the Sag new moon. So
yep.
we had lots of little plans, and that's all
It
right.
wasn't fire, it wasn't water, no wait, it was fire. We just went back
Uh-huh.
to Aries.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Right now, most of my offerings are on the Patreon, the patreon.com/ Scott K. Smith. The website is currently, under lock and key. It's being worked on, it's being changed. My offerings are being changed, the language, the appearance, all of those things are under transformation. So it's going to be that way for a few months. But I still do interact with people via email, through the Patreon itself, reaching out to me through social media, all those sorts of things. I've been mostly. What was your question? Your question was business on the front. Like what am I doing or what am I offering? Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're like
Uh,
a Reiki master times 12, you do a lot.
yeah. I mean, for those who don't know me, right? Yeah, like I kind of take an exploratory approach to my magical spiritual practices and what I'm looking for. I did start out with like pagan or earth-based roots of things with no religious, upbringing forced upon me. So I had a lot of freedom as a child into those things, and I discovered Reiki in, geez, that was 1994, I think. Yeah, and then Claudia McGregor and Cheryl Coleman, very wonderful people, partners who gave me my first two attunements, and it's been Reiki since then. So William Rand and like Karuna Reiki and all these different things I've explored and added those to my current of healing.
Yes, and on your Patreon page, which I've been a member of for many years, you
Mhm.
just released the Oceans of Love Reiki meditation, which I'm actually very thrilled is a recorded meditation because we did it in your Holy Fire Reiki class
Yes,
I took online with you.
yes,
Um,
yes.
and I'll say, anybody who comes to me about Reiki and learning Reiki, I don't teach. I always refer to you because you're the person who
Hmm.
I would suggest
No,
that
thank you.
people
Mhm.
pursue. In any magical endeavor, you always want to trust your gut and your resonance and all of that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, like the oceans of love. And there's such the coolest thing about having a Patreon page is that it's a body of work. So it's like
Mhm.
whatever was like captivating you to share and create in 2021 is still available, right? So maybe.
Oh
I
yeah, that was a year, wasn't it? 2021.
But you did like
Yeah.
I feel like that was the this like the magical attunement. I forget what it was called, but it was like an attunement to like these divine masters inside a constellation in the Big Dipper.
Oh yeah. That was through someone else's track, but we did a modified version of that by
Uh-huh.
talking about each other. Because what so we're talking about like a new age track of things that's already pre-recorded by somebody else, but what we did is we sort of unpacked it and looked at it through a more metaphysical lens to really explain some of the concepts and ideas where they come from and the occult behind it. So it wasn't just like believe it's going to happen. It's like know why it's happening, like create a connection to the relationship, to the stars and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Divine Will. That was called Divine
Divine
Will.
will,
Yeah.
yes. And I
Mhm.
learned a lot actually about creating a container for magical rituals just from the process of how we created the container for the
Mhm.
divine will.
Mhm.
Ah, oh, I just remember it so much because it was like my first winter living up here, and I like
Oh, that's right.
Right. So like I would go out and look at the stars in this new way because I've just never been able to
Hmm.
see them so brightly
Hmm.
before. Uh,
Hmm.
okay. Let's pivot into, I really want to talk to you about like this was a listener question I got for my most recent episode, I want to say, or
Hmm.
maybe two
Hmm.
episodes ago, where they asked like what happens like when a psychic prediction is incorrect. Like it was really kind of it was affecting this person's faith in the process. And like, so what's your perspective as someone who's been working in the metaphysical realm for so long about like what happens when the prediction is not coming to pass? And
Okay, so that was one of my favorite episodes. Like, I really loved that conversation. I was so into it and talking to you in the podcast, even though
great.
you couldn't hear me.
Yeah.
But I was having a conversation aloud as it was happening. And so we discussed a little bit of that before we sat together today, and I wanted to sort of go through my like internal file system to be like, okay, let's go through these processes and like see what, where, and what can we draw from. And the first thing that I came to is I am a teacher in the Temple of Witchcraft, right? So we teach various methods of magic, and it begins in the Inner Temple of Witchcraft, which is basically psychic and energy development. That's where we start, is working on the internal stuff and understanding our barometer and how we experience the world. And we have classes in there which are becoming aware of energy, understanding energy, and then understanding like the nuances that are involved there, not necessarily the right and wrong, right? But like at what part does this fit in, right? So I had this vision as I was thinking about this answer of being in a class and everyone does the astral projection together, right? So it's an undisclosed location, right? That I have set up based on numbers, right? That align with someplace in the world that I know in particular because I've been there. And then I have everyone go through a process or a method of doing that where we zoom out to that place. And everyone comes back and they bring some information. And inevitably, someone's like, like I had some, we went to a beach area in San Pedro that I know was once like a dock, and there was a building there, and people used to have parties and drinks and stuff, and all of that sort of thing. But it's not evident now. So you inevitably get someone who is like, yes, I saw the rocks. Yes, I saw ocean. Yes, I saw birds. I felt all of these things. And there's the one person who was like, I saw people dining and laughing and having drinks and doing all these sorts of things, right? So they're getting psychic information that was there, right? But when we're talking about the realm of the mystical, the magical, of psychism, is it, are we tuning into something now? Are we tuning into something later? Are we tuning into something before? Because on that side of the veil, it's all at the same time, right? It's all together, right? Like it's time is a gravity and light, mass and movement kind of thing, right? And they're beyond that. They're beyond that. So it's existing. It's speaking to us within our lens of things. So when we get psychic information, what I like to ask myself is, and also with my spirit teams, right? Is this relevant to now? Is this directly related to my question? Is this, like, where is this information coming from? Because the information I might be getting might be related to something else.
mhm.
It might be related to somewhere else, some when else, right? There could be lots of reasons that it's there. So I like to encourage people to think of less, am I wrong or right?
Mm.
Right. But what part of the puzzle am I particularly tuning into? Why is that attractive to my senses or what I see? And maybe it might not have been correct for the precise thing that they were looking for an answer for, but it could have been correct for something adjacent that they needed to see somewhere else or somewhere else. And so I like to start there with more of a curiosity and an investigative, like, let's get out our magnifying glass and look at this very closely to say, like, it could have been wrong about this if we want to pin it to that. Like, it was incorrect about what happened. And what actually was I tuning into? Because you did tune into something, right? You did tune into something. Was the possibility that was derailed because of choice, and we made different choices, and so that future, that branch on the tree, to use that, like it was pruned, right? Like, to use that whole what was that TV show, the Marvel TV show, Loki, and all the timelines, multiverse,
You
the
know, I
Marvel.
don't, the only Marvel I understand is
Yeah.
Agatha All Along, the witch one.
That's super. That's super. That's a really good one. But do you understand what I'm saying? Is I think
Yeah.
that like sometimes sometimes we see things as they could be based on where we're standing. And I think you said that in the podcast itself. These are based on choices and your trajectory. But when you change the trajectory, you change. This was just in what is that show? Outlander, Highlander. What is it called on Netflix?
Outlander. Yeah.
Outlander in this later season, like I don't want to do spoilers for anybody or whatever, but it's been out for a while. But like,
Yeah.
there's a point where the daughter has gone back in time, and then she goes forward in time, and they're looking at the records, and the records before had said that the Frasers died in this fire on this date.
Hmm.
And the fire was changed by her being there. And so then later, I can't believe I'm referencing this show.
It's a
But
great show. I love that
It's a
show.
great show. It's a great show. But then later that they go back and they see that the date is changed of the fire and the Frasers didn't die because the choices were made that changed the directory of the trajectory. Change the trajectory of things.
Yeah.
And a person that I no longer follow, but for a time I did, once said that there's life is choice. Living is choice, and a lot of it is choice, like 80%, 75%, is choice, and the rest of it is us being nudged or moved or put somewhere else because our ancestors have a different or our guides or our angels or whoever it is that we're tuning into. Um, you know, that's as Byron Ballard posted on her social media. Some of your ancestors were ruthless. Remember that. You know what I mean? Like they're there to like sort of fight for you. Like to show you the right direction. And sometimes we get nudged. So in short, were you incorrect, or were you tuning into something else, or did you make a choice that changed the future in which that prophecy or that prediction no longer was relevant?
Right. I mean, and there's so,
Yeah.
and again, like I pointed this out in that episode, but there's just so many like overlapping other people's choices that like also
Yeah.
affect whether something is a good point for you to pursue. I briefly dated someone in 2023 and my guides were like all for it. And then suddenly they turned a corner, like just like 2 months into it. I mean, it wasn't like it was ongoing. It was more like it was on the shelf. But like 2 months later, they were like, no, absolutely not. It was like the messages took a 180 and I was like, oh, what happened? But like, it was just basically that person couldn't vibrate where I needed to be. And so they were like, this isn't a good lineup for you anymore. And
Right, because it's all about relationships.
yeah,
Like not just our physical relationships with each other, not just our mental, psychic, emotional, spiritual, but like a relationship with everything. You know what I mean? And relationships are not static.
yeah,
And when we pretend they are, try to force them to be like they're doomed, right? But so when we're in a place of like true awareness and our hearts are open and our minds are open and we're in this place together, then we can see how things change. And then of course that they do. And it shatters the illusion, I think, of romance or those sorts of things, which is not something I think we should abandon. I really love romance in a lot of ways, but I think it's just not static. It's a relationship. Yeah.
and like there are many things that we can only learn in relationship with other people. So like we
Yeah.
need other people, even though their chaos is kind of hard. And I think sometimes I'll speak from my experience. Sometimes I go so hard protecting my peace, I miss out on things that I needed to, um, you know, to learn from. So
Mhm.
a good reminder. And speaking of romance, heated rivalry.
Wait, yeah, but I just want to say this before we jump to that
Okay.
because I'm so happy to talk about that show. I'm so happy to talk about that show. But you just echoed my therapist from today,
Oh,
Julie, because I told you before we met, like I love therapy, so that
uh-huh.
was first today. But she said, Julie said, there's you, me, and in between, and it's the in between where all the chaos and realization and relationship, and this is where all the stuff is at. This is where the creativity and the chaos is at. It's the in between. It's you, me, and in between. That's my therapist, Julie Howard. Yeah.
It's always such
Um,
a green flag when people quote their therapist.
yeah, yeah, yeah. She's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
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 Heated
Okay.
rivalry.
So, but yes, let's just have a little moment for heated rivalry. I didn't like understand how much I was gonna love it. It's a very well done narrative and it is like incredible. Like I am a Venus in Scorpio. For those of you who speak astrology and understand what that means, this is a Venus and Scorpio show. Like it goes to the depths.
Mhm.
It's so good.
Libra Venus. Um, but Yeah.
Any thoughts
Uh,
from a Libra Venus about this
yeah.
show without it spoiling it for people, just to encourage them?
Um, I will say when I watched the first episode, I did not like it at all. I hated it. I was like, ugh, like I don't like
Sports.
these guys. I don't like the way this is going. I don't like these characters. Like I just, it was a no. But I was like, I'm gonna be true to my nature and stick it through to the end just to see where it takes me because I need to get over my biases and just see what I feel and how I experience this. And
Mhm.
it was beautiful. It was tremendously beautiful, deeply emotional in ways that I did not really think that I was prepared for. And I mean, I really, especially in the last two episodes, I mean, I just wept. Like, it was outstanding. It was really outstanding. I love the part though, which is um, unpacking the tropes. It's not bypassing, it wasn't going around, it wasn't recreating them. It really unpacked them and like you started off with like an archetype and then it just broke apart in front of your eyes and then you really got to explore it for me at least emotionally in those ways. And yeah, I just episode 5 tears, just recognition tears. I mean, I'm like crying a little bit right now. And then episode 6, I just felt like how do I have to wait for something? How do I have to wait for more? Like this is this is yeah, it was beautiful. I don't
Uh,
know. What do you think? What are your thoughts on this? Like,
it was 6 episodes. It is worth your time. It's on HBO Max. And you really do have to like go for the journey of it,
yeah.
like because people evolve over time, and I loved the way they used time in the narrative, like where they would
Mhm,
speed up time in montages and then they would slow down time and just be in the in the present moment. And I loved
mhm,
that. And I also, it's only 6 episodes, and the if anyone watched The Last of Us, where episode 3 of that series was like about Bill and Frank, and it's like two totally separate characters in the universe. And like it was just so powerful. It's one of the best TV shows I've ever watched. Like that
mhm.
episode, best episode. And like, and I felt like this was really similar because they do the same thing with episode 3, and it's like a whole different narrative, and it's so good.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
but I don't want to spoil it for anyone. I just think it's really worth people's time in a way that I didn't fully understand, but I did it. I watched it because everyone was talking about it, and like I was like, I gotta know what they're talking about.
yeah. One of my favorite people is an author, and so they read books. So I guess they've read the series and watched the show, and then posted about what reading the books and watching the show. And so now I really I need to read
Yeah,
or
I think
audiobook.
yeah,
Yeah.
something. Okay, so speaking of reasons that you'll need to read, is that you're having a big life pivot
Yes.
this month, and you're going to be headed new places. Tell us about your life pivot.
Yeah. So I am moving to Austin. And I am very excited to be in Austin. This is, there's, I think I've probably been there when I was very young. My mom was like, "Oh yeah, we've been there." I don't remember that. I was tiny, but I have friends there. I have a new job there. It's insanely creative. I'm very happy to be a part of it. It's a giant, giant pivot. In certain ways, back into what I've done before. Like there's an administrative aspect, to what I'm doing, but also it's brand new. So I said yes. I said yes to the new opportunity, the new life, and the new open door. That was before me, and I'm super excited to experience Austin. As a 52, almost 53-year-old like person in the world, just see it with these eyes and this experience, and taste the food, and meet the people, and do the dances, and hike the hills, and be in the water, and all that sort of stuff.
There's so much good food in Austin.
Mhm.
Oh man, it's something I like to do when I visit Austin is to alternate a vegan meal with a barbecue meal because they do
Mhm.
both excellently in
Mhm.
Austin.
Mhm. Mhm.
Oh, so good. Will you talk about the magic that you performed last year on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, etc., that kind of catalyzed this, but this isn't what you specifically like. This wasn't the specific outcome. You were kind of being more open. But it's so cool the way Spirit will just like take a direction and an opening and then give you something you didn't predict.
Yes. Let me center myself real quick on that one because I want to say I think that this will resonate with certain people in a way, right? And I think everyone may hear it, but I think certain people may resonate with this very strongly, which was I noticed that I enjoyed my life, right? Like I enjoyed my life before and everything that I was doing. And I had a home studio and I was like seeing clients regularly and I was teaching classes and I was doing online portals and all of these sorts of things. But there was an element of as if I'd reached a ceiling or I found the rings of Saturn. I found the edges, right? Like there was a Saturnian influence there in which this was the capsule of this experience that I was experiencing, but it wasn't enough for my soul. Like I needed something greater than what was there emotionally, spiritually, financially. There was all of the Lees, right? Like the whole Lee family was there being like, there needs to be more Scott, right? Like my mom's middle name is Lee. Um, and I really wanted to like I needed to figure out what I was doing next. And everything that I did was like a giant effort, tiny result, giant effort, tiny result, giant effort, tiny result. And so I was spending more than I was earning to sort of use a capitalistic thing. But I mean, like energetically, I was, sending out more than I was getting in return. So I had to ask myself, what's next? Right. So that was the year that we lost Trixie, like our beloved companion and how she was with us. I lost my father that year. My dad, who I'd become so close to, was like one of my favorite people. Like I was losing my home. There was so many things that were happening that were like ending, right? And I had gotten a great reading by Sam Bellier at Scorpio Rising Astrology, and he was like, "Girl, it's because of all these things." And I was like, "That makes sense." Like purging my fourth house, like it was liquidating, everything associated with that. So I needed to do something. And what is my strength? My strength is magic. My strength is spellcraft. Is ritual, is energy, is intention, is being very clear about those things. So I, from the solstice, prepared my materials. I had this is what I want. I want to know like, is this, is it going forward with what I'm doing or am I opening to a new direction? Am I putting this part of my life aside and starting something new? Where do I go? And I got a very clear answer, which was open up to the next thing, be ready for the next thing. And I was like, okay, so from solstice to New Year's, then I planned my candles. I got beautiful candles from my student who made them for a final project in witchcraft, too. And like I had all, like I went to my favorite bookstores and I got incenses and all of my favorite things. And I prepared for New Year's and New Year's Day to actualize this energy, to put it all together. So I went into Palm Springs, I went into the desert, I built this big grid with the black snake for the year of the snake and like crystals for prosperity and awakening and transformation. And I built that whole grid out and released that energy into the new moon of the year of the snake. And that was my third part of the spell, which was releasing that energy out there to nurtured that seed to growth that I had planted, in the winter months, and to give it the time and space to materialize, right? Big life changes, right? Little instant magic spells. I'm crossing my fingers. I'm doing my instant magic trigger, right? Like I'm going to make something happen real quick, right? Little mudra, right? But lunar spells are things that happen in a month, right? But a year-long spell, something done on a solstice, right, which is when it's dark and light is being reborn, right? How long does this take to mature? Right? How long does this take to grow in relationship to the magic that you're doing? So I sort of looked at it that way: as how do I do this? I took apart the grid after I was done. And then I said, what do I do with the parts of this grid? And it's like, you'll know who to give these crystals and things to as the year progresses. And each time it was a planting of that prosperity and change. Each time it was a planting of that prosperity and change until all of those were gone. And I kid you not, it was 3 weeks after the last crystal, and the last crystal actually broke. It fell and it broke at the studio that I had in Northeast LA as I was closing it. On the day I was moving out, the crystal fell and broke. So I planted the broken pieces in the plants there, and I was like, "It's done, it's done," And then I got the job offer. I got the job
Wow.
offer, and I was like, yeah, the answer is yes. Literally, I was like, the answer is yes. What am I doing? Like, yeah. uh, and uh, and then subsequently, like now that everything is lined up in that direction, it's opened. Like the things that I needed to take care of that we were talking, before we did the podcast, that I needed to make sure were lined up before I left, lined up. Like and it started to flow past the rings, right, into the new space. Like I'm moving into my Jupiter era, right? Like as I'm moving into that expansive place now, because I've exceeded the life in the world that I had, and I'm growing into something new. And I really, I'll go back to the discipline of magic and putting it together in a way that felt right in my soul and in my mind for what I wanted, and then deciding how I was going to implement that with the time that I had, and allowing it to work, just getting out of the way and allowing it to work.
Getting out of the way and allowing it to work.
Hmm.
And like just trusting, like, because you do things, this is like affirmative prayer, but like you pray with the idea that it's already happening and with gratitude that it's happening. And
Hmm.
in this way, like you did your magic, you felt how powerful it was, you really intentionally moved your energy towards this thing, and then just stepped out of the way and let it brew. And it even came to fruition before the following solstice, which I think
Yeah.
is so cool.
Yeah, like you're bringing to mind to me too, like and when talking about intention and trust and things, like the amount of frustration I had for things was energy that was not going
Yeah.
where I intended it to go. So I just had to ask myself, like, what is the Aikido here? Like, how do I redirect this energy into where I can, where I can grow? Where does it want to flow? How many times in my life have I gone someplace and been like, okay, guides, what do I do? You're like, what do I do here? They're like, do Reiki. And it's always been like, "Buh," and then the Reiki like flows and opens up, and then everything starts to happen that way. It's just, where does it want to go? A lot of it's choice, but some of it's kind of getting nudged.
Yeah,
Where is the open door?
I'm really grateful you brought that percent up because that actually is interesting because I think some of the ways I've held myself back is kind of like after being, having those moments where everything falls apart. And that's happened a couple major times in my life. Like in many ways, like I think after the last time, I was just kind of like, if God wanted to, she would, and if she's not, like I'm just gonna take this time in the moss, and just like rest. But I do realize there is effort I have to put forward and choices I
Yeah.
have to make, and not choosing is a choice. And yeah, so just like being on I just feel like life is like this little quest. And like I'm just like getting clues and things are lining up and things make it's like I experience time in a spiral almost because I can, the more I develop my psychic senses, the more I can sense what's coming. But then I also have a better and a more solid understanding of the past too. So it's almost like I'm
Ooh.
experiencing things in new ways.
Ooh.
Grief has
Ooh.
really taught me a lot about that because it's like I've noticed the evolution of my relationships with people who are no longer Earthside
Yeah.
and the ability for me to understand better that person's experience and perspective 20 years ago, like and so then I'm like, oh, and so it's just there's a grace to being able to reframe how you experience time and the way energy is moving and how
Oh.
we have energy, but we also have all this support, from unseen who want to help, and like we kind of just like yeah, just like make a road for it through our
Hmm.
magic and
Hmm.
and just intention too, because really the first and most important part of magic is intention.
You know what? You said so many great things right there. But like the spiral like really sticks out to me a lot, because that we often covered the same track at just a different level. And so we see things from a new perspective because we're at a higher level, or at a different vantage point from where we were before. And maybe to the person who was asking the question, like what happens when the prediction is wrong, maybe as in that episode too, you also talking about clear channeling, right? Like being a clear channel in the episode. Sanea Roman, who did the Divine Will group, the stuff that we did, who has since passed, um, she did the channeling, and in that was the more you know, the more information that you personally have as an identity, as a soul in the world, the more access you have. You create a library of vocabulary for your channel to speak through, right? So, because we are the interface, and so the more information that we have, right? And it's not to say like someone who doesn't have it is wrong or less or anything like that, but it's versatility, right? It's just a bigger vocabulary for those sorts of things. And as we spiral up, we do learn, as you're saying, like we grow and we learn different things, and then we come back and you're like, oh, it's that that grass isn't green, it's emerald, and like you have a different perspective on the same thing from another level. And I think that could also be the case in some of those things too, is that there's information gathering in a certain way, um, that could be also part of the process.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for people around patience with the process?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, do I have the best advice? I don't know. I'm
You
a
have
very impatient
experience.
person. Yeah, I have experience, but I'm a very impatient person. I really am. I like things to happen, as the song goes, I know what I want and I want it now. Right? Like, I just, but I have to be patient, like, and I think that the best advice for that is to, let's see, what works for me, I would say, is not being so overly involved in the point or the process, and remembering to do things like stretch, breathe, walk, step away, focus on something else, and give it the space by actually physically creating the space in my own world and self, so I'm not hyper focused on it. Like, am I patient yet? No, you're not patient yet. This is in fact quite the opposite, Scott. Like, but like, what could I do with that energy and that time? It's a relationship, and that needs space. You, me, and the in between, right? So the universe, right, and the in between, like what's in the in between, and that's the space there to sort of allow those things to open up. In my Reiki manual, um, Reiki Spirit, one of the key things that I like to talk about in learning Reiki is understanding that it's not just energy, that it is an intelligent, benevolent, healing force. It does have smarts, right? And it has guides and beings in the current of that energy. And we miss something when we just reduce it to energy,
Mhm.
and we make it into an object, right? Or a resource, right? But it's actually in its own way a living being, right? That's growing with us as we do Reiki learns, as we learn with Reiki, right? So, but that all happens. The understanding of that and the experience of that is when we pause enough to ask and to feel and to see and to be curious about that development that's happening there in the in between,
Mm.
right? Between you and the Reiki, because there's a share back to you. When you sit with Reiki, Bevin, right? When you sit with Reiki and you hold it and you're asking questions, you start to receive, right? I mean,
I feel the benefit, honestly, every time I do a healing on someone else, I feel the benefit. And so,
yeah,
because it's coming through me. And
yeah.
the Reiki path, I have to say, like the path that it takes you on, my life significantly changed when I got Reiki attuned for the first time. And I really feel like my aerobics class,
Mhm.
Fat Kid Dance Party Aerobics, for anyone who feels left behind by mainstream fitness. Haven't talked about her yet today, so I'm just
Do
going to
it.
patreon.com/FKDP stands for Fat
Yes.
Kid Dance Party. You support this podcast by doing it. You also support and get access to these great aerobics. But I started the aerobics class and I could feel the Reiki path being part of it. And like
Mhm.
very much like, I mean, I literally offer a Reiki healing in the class too. So if you
Mhm.
want to get a healing, it's so many things. This class is
Mhm.
not just like a fitness class, but let's just call it that because that's what makes sense. But
Mhm.
it's an inner child healing. I have grief support. I have rage aerobics. I'm really here
Mhm.
to help you like regard yourself with love and grace, but also like have a container that moves your feelings through you instead of getting them
Mhm.
stuck in you. Uh,
Mhm.
but the Reiki is all part of it. It's so
Mhm.
powerful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott, do you have anything else? Anything else that like the channel wants to express through you on in our podcast time together?
Um, I mean, I always have lots to say, but
As a true Leo.
as a truly, I always have lots to say. But I do want to say this is that what I've recognized over the last like 3 or 4 years, like of things as I've grown spiritually, magically, as I've, as a human being in the world, um, who's different than a lot of people, and I recognize that, right? Like I'm speaking from my experience, and my experience is very different sometimes. But there's more than what we're experiencing through the lens of our technology. And the difference between what is outside of that and what's within it is an entire universe, right? That's not seen through that lens. And it is very unfortunate that it has come to the place where that terrain of social media and the internet is being controlled by a few people, but not just that, used in such a way, it's being articulated in such a way to control us, right? To rage bait us, to bring us into smaller and smaller psychic spaces so that we are pitted against one another, so that we see the world as a horrible place. And there are horrors in the world that are magnified in that. And then there are things imagined that don't exist. And we're losing the ability to discern between the two of them.
Mm.
I almost got run over by someone this year who was using their screen to back up a car. And I thought, turn your head because I'm standing here and your screen on the back is not seeing me. And we just need to start to move and to turn and to look and rely less on the technology, which is great. Technology is great. Like there's probably good uses for AI in science and medicine and all kinds of things. But my strongest spirit message that I have had, and we talked about this before we began, was to start to close up the social media, start to close up all of these sorts of things. I'm not prescribing anything for anybody, but just saying to be cautious and aware that we're entering a new phase of these things, and there's give it less room, and be more discerning with the room that you give this new technology in your lives, and start to return to like the places behind me in this image that you see on my screen, which is of trees and sunlight and air, and be in your body in those places. Engage in fat kid dance body aerobics, engage in Reiki, engage in mindfulness and eating and walking and talking and holding hands and petting the dog and cat and you know whatever those things are, and less to these devices, which are you can't see it because there it is, on my phone. But because we have entered already into new territory, and we have been there for some time, but I think it's becoming very evident how dangerous it really is. And that's the strongest spiritual advice that I've got. Like, be careful.
Yeah. I got a really cool message a year and a half ago or so, and they were like, it's you don't sleep with a plunger and you don't cuddle a wrench. Like it's a tool, it's not forever. So even like
Yes.
spending a couple hours where the phone's inside and you're outside in the garden,
Yeah.
every now and again. I mean, I don't typically take hikes by myself without my phone, but like sometimes I do, like
Hmm.
where I know
Yeah.
I'm easy to be found. So,
Yeah.
but like it's just important to have the resonance and the frequency of Mother Earth undisturbed by
Yeah.
the pings that we can't see but can certainly feel in our.
There was a trend a little bit on it's sort of message on social media, right? It sort of messaged through on those things about how Gen X was the hinge generation. We were the generation. I am Gen X. We were the generation that existed before all of the technology, but while it occurred, and so we learned to navigate between the two spaces,
Yeah.
and to exist without it. And I think that it's not to say that, by default, then if you are after that, there's something screwy with you or whatever, that's not what I'm saying. But like there is, I think, a wisdom and understanding that there is a world beyond these things. And it is it is life, it is reality, it is dangerous, and also it is beautiful and amazing and full of sensuous things that we want to get with a lot of these type of videos that are recreating what we could just do by opening a bag of popcorn and sticking your face in it or something. You know what I mean? Like this,
Yeah.
it's get in it, get in it in the way that's safe and good and lovely for you, and experience it, and connect to yourself through your senses and the world, and be a part of that. Be a part of that. That's
Yeah.
where spirit's really speaking to us. Desire is the flame of our soul. This is where we're at. Come alive with that, burn with that. Feel it, think about it, touch it, know it, live it, lick it, kiss it. Like it's understand it. Because it's speaking to us.
I love it. Scott, thank you so much for your
Mm,
wisdom, for your persistence in being you and unfolding, and your magic. You offered on your Patreon and I took you up on it to be in that powerful grid on the new year. I don't even remember
thank
what
you.
I told you on there other than my name. But hey, I can't wait for
Uh,
that to come to pass, whatever it was.
uh, uh,
Um, but I love and appreciate you so much. Thanks for being
yeah.
here.
Thank you so much, Bevin, always for having me. I'm so happy to be here every time.
Yay.
Bye.